computer it is. Okay. It's impossible to plan a webinar so that everybody can attend. So we figure by recording it, we're going to maximize the opportunities for people to access. So before I introduce Chris, our presenter officially, I just want to remind everyone that we have 4 webinars in this series. Today's is about marketing workplace literacy, and our next webinar will be on assessments in workplace literacy. The third will be about delivering workplace literacy, and the last but not least will be on evaluating workplace literacy. You're welcome to sign up for just those webinars that hold interest for you. There's no requirement to sign up for the entire series, but if you want to, then that's a-okay with us. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today, Chris Prosser. Chris has been with the Literacy Group since 2013 after immigrating from the UK. Chris joined Adult Literacy after a career of teaching English at the high school level and as an ESL instructor in China and Vietnam. Chris has 2 young children that keep him very busy, but when time allows, he enjoys reading, sports, and carpentry. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thanks.
Thank you. Sadly, those 2 children have stopped the carpentry. There's an unfinished tree house in the backyard that kind of ended my carpentry career. So I better remove that one just in case. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for having me tomorrow. I very much always appreciate meeting this extended community. It's my pleasure today. It's my pleasure and my concern that I'm sharing this information with such a wide, established, skilled, experienced community, and I'm coming at it very much from the angle that, you know, this is an event to share, and for me to learn as much as I give out. So I really am looking forward to this, and I think the fact that we're on the cusp and the edge of something so exciting in terms of delivering workplace literacy, and how important that's going to be with the changes coming up, and with the ministry having felt like they've actually listened to the way literacy needs to be developed, and now that they're putting emphasis on that, I feel like we are as LBS providers in the best place to start that. So I look forward to this one. So just a bit of ground rules. There's going to be questions, obviously, and comments. Please either put them in the chat box or raise your hand, and I will try and tackle those as much as possible. This process today is that of sort of a 3-section, where we have the takeaway, where we're going to be providing some opportunities to go away and independently work on some of the things we'll talk about here, and that time when we come back in 2 weeks' time as a community and look at the work that we've worked on independently together. In terms of microphones and cameras, obviously, I appreciate that they're not, it's not great for bandwidth during the working day, so they're not going to be mandatory. However, if we do have an opportunity to get into breakout rooms, I request that we put our cameras and our mics on as well there. So, perfect. Okay, so covering today's class. Look at this and me. You can take them out of the classroom, but you can't, right? Do the other way around. So we're going to be looking at 5 topics of areas that I have, or the literacy group, and has had the opportunity to work with corporate support. So that's the for-profit field in terms of working as a network within a community of for-profit corporate partners. So we had an opportunity a few years back, certainly before COVID, to get some funding where we could work with a consultant. And during that training, we were able to develop a very close friendship and a support partnership within a number of networks that have corporate partners within them. So all of our literacy, our workplace literacy pieces have been sort of ran by these corporate partners. And TLG has been very lucky to have this ongoing training, whether that be official training or sort of like an email communication every now and then, to work with some very large, no small, but certainly medium to large corporate partners. working in the manufacturing field. So that's where we've come from in this one, is that we've been able to have that local support, and one organization in Vegas, which is always cool, because as we chat with them, the sun is coming up and I can look out their back window and see the sun coming up on Vegas, which is always pretty cool to do. So we've had that. So we're able today to talk about evaluating and looking at our strengths and barriers of what we do every day and what we do as an organization. We're looking at what sort of changes we're going to have to be doing to make sure that we're successful, and how to play the field, looking at the expectations we can have, and really learn how to play the game with these partners. We're going to then look at how we develop a strategy that is suitable for working workplace literacy, so working with these corporate for-profit partners. Then we're going to take a look at our communicating our goals and successes, so looking at how we can sell our services, this is for the free programming, how we can sell our services and how can we relate to them in terms of a corporate service. And then we're going to look at, well, how can we do all of this from the side of our desks, as we are an overstretched and underfunded community service provider? How can we start to do that within our limits? So I'm actually, Tamara, because people are still coming in, I'm probably not going to do a breakout room meet and greet sort of thing here, because I imagine that would be really complicated to put people in breakout rooms as they're coming in. So we're going to maybe skip this one slide, but I'll put a pin in it and bring it back if that's all right with you. Cool, perfect. So the first thing that we did when we started, when we started to look at the services that we already provided. So this, like I said, this was done about 5 years ago, and we were already in a situation where TLG, having been serving the public for around 20 years plus, there's always that, that we'd always had a workplace literacy program, whether that be working with local service providers, or a couple of times we had some programs that ran us out into Mississauga with some manufacturings. From my experience with the literacy group, there was always an element there, but never was there an opportunity where TLG as an organization sat down and evaluated what we've done in the past with a goal to make it more substantial and make it a regular part. So it would be one-to-one tutoring, small core groups, modular programming, and workplace literacy. And it was really important for us to recognize that this needed to be an extra pillar to our services, and it needed to be an additional pillar to our services, separate from our core programming, because there is from what we found, there is an entirely different communication process, management process, strategic plan needed for workplace literacy, that our group programs, our core programs, just were not able to cover. So we had to do a deep dive, a deep evaluation, looking at what we've done before to really pull out the strengths and weaknesses to take forward. So the questions we asked ourselves, we asked about content, we asked about delivery, we asked about what the program management required, and we also asked about, well, what kind of sales approach, what approach did we use to reach out to these workplaces? What worked? And we found a lot of the time that the success that we had was through word of mouth. A tutor who ran a business thought this would be good for their business, or the person who was a couple of doors down found out what we did from a garage sale one day and asked if we did that. It was very much opportunistic and random that we were able to get these opportunities to do workplace literacy, and that needed to change. We needed to be more proactive, we found. Oh, sorry. All right. My apologies. Just lost my notes. There we go. We talked about then the program content. We talked about, that was what worked and what did not work from those points of view. And then we analyzed what the key lessons were moving down. So we squeezed it down to 3 or 4 pieces that were bite-sized, manageable for us to take away as an organization. We thought about what this program would look like as a success, and we set ourselves as a success, what the success criteria look like, because that is very much what we've learned is a lot of corporate and a lot of for-profit organizations is they have that goal to succeed, and that clear pathway, that step-by-step guide to success was very much important to them, and we needed to present that to them in black and white in order to break down that communication barrier between LBS and corporate delivery. And we found that, you know, as terms of LBS, there was a lot of no man land jargon, and there was very few connectors, even though they were very obvious, but there were very few connectors of communication to show what we do so well to put into their language. And that's what we found. As we worked through our training, we started to find those connecting pieces where we found that neutral language, or we were able to convert our language of the services we delivered into theirs. And that's hopefully what I'm going to be covering some of today. So my first step would be to be prepared. There was a lot of back and forth in the early days when we started to have that communication with corporate partners. We'd have the initial meet, we'd have that conversation, we say, let's email, and you know, we'd email back and forth, talk about this is what we do, what do you need? And they would say, well, we need this, what do you do? And then we'll say, well, we can do this, but we could do this, we're flexible. And it's just that element of how LBS is community delivered, specific, very, very flexible, wasn't structured enough for the corporate businesses that we needed. They were interested or showed interest. They wanted package. They wanted to see this, we have package A, B, or C. A will get you these results, B will get you these results, C will get you these results. They wanted that sort of like, offer me what you've got, and we will tell you what is great, then you tell us a start time, and let's get started. And a lot of that issue that we had is that we weren't prepared with some of the questions to make those packages there. We weren't ready offhand to do that. We were ready to start having conversations and network and do what LBS does so well and create that of a sort of a needs assessment process, while that necessarily wasn't how they wanted the relationship to start. So being prepared as an organization, we need to know things like, you know, we need to have that understanding where the cost of turnover for an organization is, so we're ready for that one. We need to know length of time. We need to know timelines for the training. We need to know how it will start with assessment and what the assessment's for. We need to be able to have facts and figures and success stories ready to see how we're working with businesses before. We need to be able to pitch, but not at that higher level within the organization, but to pitch to the mid-level and to the lower level, and be prepared for that information to go up to the top, to the people making the decisions. So never at any point did we say, yeah, we want to meet, you know, the executive director, or we want to meet the head honcho there. We were always preparing ourselves to go in at that bottom level and be clear, precise, and sharp and quick enough and know our story for them to take the highlights and go up. There's never I wouldn't say they were never prepared, but it was never going to happen when we bombard them with information and exact details, because those details are not going to go up. It's that quick sale, it's that highlights, it's that strengths. This is what we do so well into the language, feeding at the bottom, and then they will take those summaries and highlight them and take them up. So that is really what we kind of learned, is to have that almost that prepaid, that package plan, that speech, elevator speech, whatever you like, so that it can go in and hopefully get a bite from the rest of the organization. And more importantly, we need to be confident in our services. There's no reason why we shouldn't be, but we're here, we're having that communication with them because there's an issue and we know we can fix it. The biggest piece that came out from these consortiums that we worked with was that they really did appreciate that we, as an organization, were a non-for-profit and who we worked with, that charitable basis there. So you're going to, it's very important to find those leveraging pieces that are going to make you different from any sort of other corporate training providers. So I know there's lots out there. And we even, we even kind of were approached by a couple. I wouldn't say, I'd have to go back and check their email. I wouldn't say they were claiming to be an organization trying to find out what we were doing, but they certainly didn't make it clear enough that they were also a corporate trainer and they wanted to see what we were doing to, steal the secret sauce. But we certainly have experience where we know that there are competing organizations out there, and they want to know why our services are free. How are you doing it for free? What's the catch? What are you delivering? What are your what are your experiences? What are your credentials, etc.? So we were aware out there that providing free workplace literacy training was deemed as quite threatening for people and organizations who found that out. And I think because we were in that network and our emails and our marketing information was getting kicked around and stuff like that within those corporate partners, that's where some of it slipped to find out. So that investment piece there that we talked about leveraging, about what we do, about making us so different, really did, I put this slide front and center because it was really very, very important for some of the local, so Cambridge-based manufacturers who we worked with, because they liked to have that understanding that by investing time and supporting our programs here, was keeping us, was allowing us to hit our numbers, was supporting the organization, keeping our funding. And they very much liked to, I wouldn't say Twitterify, they weren't, it wasn't a social media game. There was an element of that, but it was very much for the right reasons. They really did appreciate to have that partner with that community base. So they understood, and they liked the fact that partnering us kept our services free and open to the community. They liked the fact that they were having a direct support of increasing skill levels and especially workplace literacy skill levels in the region up. They love the fact that we were working with decreasing poverty and empowering adults. But they were also really, really keen is that because that direct programming with us, we were actually increasing the workplace, the pool of skilled workers to hire within the community and have that long-standing response to improving the population, the skill levels in the population, rather than emergency response of a band-aid. They were looking at, by investing in us and working with us in partners, we can help us get to the root cause of community issues. So don't be afraid to really share what your organization does as an LBS service provider. Share the mandate, share the mission statement, and have that part and recognize that part as a real unique selling point front and center. Because even in terms of how they hire and how they take, right now it is a tough market to find people. So the fact that these partners were putting in to their marketing and putting into their hiring posts and information like this, that they are a proud sponsor and supporter of this program. A lot of young talent, a lot of new generational talent coming through are looking for that community charitable relationship. So they very much saw this as an opportunity. And that's really kind of pushes us on to the next slide there, where we look for opportunities where we can be unique. And it's a case where this is where you really need to do that in-depth look. And we had a number of our board directors also help us on this one. But it was I just remember sitting down with the consultant we were working with, a couple of other supports from the network that we were working with, but the two HR supports, the two HR heads of HR for the manufacturing organizations we did some partnering with in Cambridge, and we all sat down around this table, and we were all, obviously talking different language and having a different understanding of what LBS and TLG actually does. And that it was confusing and it was complicated to get that out there, but the goal is to write, well, now that we know kind of what we do, what makes us unique? And the goal was to find that unique selling point. What made the delivery of our workplace training so unique and so different? So we kind of came out with our own points, and you'll recognize these, of course, is that, as working with us, their employees will have access to a large community referral network. They'll have access to experts within the community, to other free services. We work with an organization in Waterloo that worked with a lot of newcomers to Canada, and we were able to support them with referrals to Reception House and Working Center, and even go searching for that information for them and bring it back because we had that linked network. If a newcomer to Canada was isolated, within their own community there, and really only had an employer as a communicator, then it's difficult for that employer to find that correct information and services. We were able to do that. We had that network. We work with a learner as a long-term independent plan. So when they're working with us, when we're working with our instructors, they're able to recognize other areas of concern. Not necessarily maybe we have high training in that, but learning barriers, evidence of poverty, challenges with family literacy, all those pieces like that, we're able to recognize that, we're able to make those supports and lower the fact that these issues are going to be affecting their employment and affecting their how they do their job. And again, employers thought that was great. They saw that, they definitely saw that as an issue, that employees were being late, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, they weren't getting this, and they saw that, well, we can recognize that and we can prevent that and stop that and support that before it starts affecting their job. We specialize in individual assessment and skills upgrading to meet the goal. And I know Doug is going to be speaking about this one in more detail than me. But again, it's a great role for us to say, well, we do this for a living. We look and assess the individual barriers of each of your employees, and we work with the job that they need to do, the materials that they have, and their levels, and we create that individualized plan. And the concept of individual training versus whole group corporate training was incredible. I mean, for me to sit on a table with an ex-Amazon project manager and go, yes, well, when we delivered, language and literacy training, it was to a group of 100 people in a room. We never had a thought that there was an organization out there who could do groups of 10s or groups of 8s, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a big seller. We really hammered home that we could support them with creative programming related to the actual workplace documents that they would be using. And we would continually use our assessing and evaluating to look towards the next step. What is the next referral on? How can they keep working? How can, maybe they could use some software at home, what groups they could be going to, what's the further piece? So that continual learning piece is always going to be very important there. Tamara, do you think maybe we're at capacity for 23 to have a little breakout room, or do you think just with the numbers we could keep going?
When you say keep going, Chris, do you mean just sort of have everybody share as opposed to doing it in a breakout room? Or I think our numbers are stable now, so.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I wouldn't mind taking a stop out just to break out in a few small rooms and just give us an opportunity to look at our services, at what makes us unique, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I am going to break out into random rooms here. And again, I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock just so that we can go around the groups. I'm not going to make them big, just so that we can go in the breakout room maybe have that opportunity that we missed at the start, just to introduce ourselves, maybe give an example of what we've done in terms of workplace literacy, but then also think at least maybe top three pieces, deliverables of your organization that would make you unique and leverageable, in like we've been talking about here. So tomorrow, don't worry, I think I know how to break out room. So so it's 23. So we'll get everything down. So there'll be about 3 or 4 people in the room, and it's going to be random. And then I will give you guys 5 minutes, and then I'll give you the 60-second warning when it's time to come back. Just in time.
I can share a little bit about the conversation from my breakout room.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I was in chats with Elizabeth. She was talking about workplace training she had done where they had done math assessments. So the training was very individualized, and they were able to understand a little bit about testing anxiety. She said that was an interesting point for me, that they were able to support kind of the emotional side and the soft skills of test taking. That was something that the people in this factory environment hadn't encountered for many, many years. So it was something that we encounter in LBS and are pretty familiar with it. Learning how to multiple choice test, those features of learning that are a sort of separate skill set from the skills they're learning in terms of the LBS for the math. So I thought that was an interesting point. And that this was kind of a plus and a minus. She was saying that one of the challenges, and maybe this is something you're going to speak to with a corporate environment, is they're looking for faster units, maybe, micro credentialing and things like that. Whereas our mindset is often a much longer arc of skill development that is not very necessarily quick to uptake at the beginning and can take a lot of building upon at the beginning. And then we see it build at a quicker pace farther along. So maybe trying to speak to that and speak the same language as employers is even something that we wanted to see, hopefully, in conversation here, because trying to make sure that they're understanding the value of a longer term commitment and arc of learning would be really valuable, we think, because these aren't skills that necessarily are, 2-week or 4-week courses. No, so that was kind of where our conversation went.
It reminds me of my group instructor before, but sadly she had to leave because of COVID, her husband. But I remember taking her to a TOWS with Toyota manufacturing, so big. It was a big TOWS, and she was adjudicating. And then I came back from I think I might have just stepped away to put more money on the car or something. And she had a group of these group of adults all in a group, and she was working on them with anxiety techniques, because they were, TOWS is tough and there's a numeracy part to it, and she all had them breathing and calm. And it's true, right? And that would be a big part that would affect test taking, would be a big part that doesn't enable them, doesn't affect them doing the job, but it will affect them taking a test. And adults that we work with in those entry-level positions, very much so, any sort of anxiety to assessment. So yeah, that's a great, thank you, appreciate sharing. Any other I wanted to share within that group?
I can talk a little bit about what happened in our conversation, and I invite Lori and Sally and Tracy to add anything if I've missed anything. What it got down to for us was the human approach, seeing humans in the workplace, seeing the individual in the workplace. And you think about what what we offer that the others don't. That's sort of where it starts for me, because there's a lot of training programs out there. So not only what can we offer, but what makes us different. And again, it gets back to that human approach, the contextualized learning. Somebody said, you know, we can provide individual training. And I like that training piece, the individual training. And I also like that we are connected to community services, so that we also bring that. If we see additional needs, we can help people move on to those other, supports and resources in the community. We also can connect people to further learning. The training doesn't stop when the session stops. If we see that there's additional need, we can connect people to further learning based on whatever individual needs are. So again, it gets back to that human approach versus maybe a canned approach that maybe a corporate training department may have. So we did start going down to challenges. You can't sort of talk about what we offer without thinking about challenges, and we may talk about this in the future, but the paperwork that employers need to fill out if we bring them into LBS. But we also started talking about other options, and maybe we'll talk about those later. So, and again, I invite my roommates to talk about anything that I may have missed.
We're literally talking about that the other day, about what COVID has done. One of the good things that COVID has done with our intake process, about how we've moved it very much online and streamlined it to be online with Google Forms and fillable forms and stuff like that. And so, this position where we used to get, a group of 15 people in the room, and they used to, get the long pink sheets out and fill it in and sign the back and explain why we're giving the SIN number, all these kind of pieces like that, is actually now streamlined and probably more appropriate to do with that third-party piece of workplace literacy. And even more so where they haven't had a referral from a caseworker who kind of knows what we do, to soften up and prepare them to move over and start signing their life away, sort of thing, where it's an employer. And the element of trust, well, I don't know them and you're my employer, so I'm kind of like really trusting you either, where that piece is actually missing from where we've had that softer wraparound approach before with learners within a network to this. So we've talked about streamlining. We feel we're in a better position where that would be less painful, like you mentioned that. So I've mentioned just a few times about communicating to that corporate world, and we've covered it there. And thank you, Tamara, for that wonderful comment about a lot of organizations don't even have that access to basic skills training. And so we found out that when we talked about small group delivery, and that's what we do, a lot of corporate training, they shared that a lot of corporate training is only offered to large groups on that, that parrot passion sort of piece. There was never very little attention to basic and soft skills. And obviously, as we know, that those soft skills or the workplace skills or whatever we talk about now, we embed those in to our literacy-based program. So we already have those in the schemes of work that we deliver, and how to speak to an employer, what to do if this happens, what to do if that happens, that those pieces are already in there. So having to say that we already have them in there, and using that as a selling point to say we also can support as part of a day-to-day, your employees, as they learn with us, will be having embedded digital skills, because we embed digital learning as part of this course. And there would be an employment soft skill embedded in this as well. And they almost feel like, wow, we're getting this for free, and you're putting these extra pieces in. Almost seems like it's a lot more, and this is embedded, this is embedded, and this is embedded, because we do that naturally, and it's things that they feel like they're almost getting on top of the delivery itself. They shared that they had some, but very little barrier recognition. And the biggest challenges they had for any sort of barrier recognition was once the training was done and the employees had started their work, and their supervisor would recognize that they're struggling to read this, or they're not keeping up with this, or they're not keeping up with that. And often if it's reached the eyes of the supervisor, that's often a little bit too late. And that person, that employer, is already under the radar, under the microscope, as not being able to keep up and do their job. So they actually really enjoyed and they really thought it was great that that barrier recognition was going to be done within training, and those errors could be caught or nipped in the bud before they got their hands on and risked, you know, health or mistakes or expenses early on. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Chris. This is great, by the way. Really enjoying it, learning a lot. One of the things that we found in the project we're working with Tamara on is sometimes the shift supervisors, for instance, aren't aware of things like that we really are aware of, things like learning styles. And I think if we could do some training with the middle management around learning styles, some of these other issues, workplace issues, may take care of themselves. Maybe it's the supervisor who's doing some coaching or training on a particular new machine or a new process, but they're only teaching it on one way, not realizing that some people are more tactile and others are more visual, that kind of stuff. So I just thought to throw that out there.
No, yeah, you actually read my mind. I'm probably coming up in the next couple of slides, but to have where we're able to deliver that training, but also train the trainer sort of approach with our, you know, with what we do so well, to provide those modules to say, well, here's a sensitivity training or a literacy training to help, you know, empower some of your supervisors or higher up team, and to recognize this. But definitely the idea that it was done early on, before mistakes were being made, expensive mistakes and costly mistakes for turnover, etc., was a big sell point for that. And we used that, we leveraged that, and we said, we have these indicators in place to recognize this already. And again, there was a big selling point is that we would design using our resources that we have in place, and we would design resources and programs that were naturally adult basic skills embedded, but embedded the workplace that they do specific, the documents that they use, the training they use, the jobs they need to do. So there's that the addition of the essential skills they need to have to do and be successful in their job, in their role, added to core basic Canadian adult low literacy skills. And it was that combination that they go, right, so you're going to take something that you guys are experts at and add the stuff that we need to do, so the documents they need to access, etc., like that, and you're going to create this new package that we're getting for free again. And again, it's a yes, it's a nod, we can do that, we can work with that. And who wouldn't go for that? Who wouldn't sign up for that, right? So it's really a case that we have that. It's appealing enough. It's just how do we market and communicate it? Oops, I missed a slide. Sorry. So again, like I've just said, we use those individualized learning models. We specialized in those small groups, so we're able to do that. Again, individualized assessment tools that are based on finding the foundation or the basic skills of that person with their barrier. And I've just actually seen my program manager come in, which is fantastic, but great timing, where we use assessments like the camera, where it is almost like, you know, a sit down conversation based, looks at all basic skills, but you're also able to draw out those other pieces that those wraparound supports can support. Such as soft skills, so we can pull out those soft skills there. We, like Doug said, we can do an example where we can we recognize the learning barriers, the learning styles, and have those things in an individualized plan and inform the employers at the beginning to say, well, you know, you've got a group of employees here. They're going to be doing this role. We've noticed that this person needs these supports. And having that information right in place is something the employer may choose not do or not to do, but I favor that they appreciate having this information so they can support that person as a workplace accessibility issue, so that no mistakes, costly or health mistakes are affected when they go forward. And I said before, it's designed from an adult literacy piece. So we have that foundation there where this stuff has been developed for an adult using low skills. So you know, it's very difficult to go, well, for our corporate partners to go, well, you're teaching them basic phonics or you're teaching them basic comprehension, but you have adult level resources for this, task-based resources for this to point as well. So that was very much in favor of them, because they did refer a number of times back to when I taught my daughter how to read. And I'm like, well, we want to get out of that mindset, because delivering to young people their literacy skills to delivering to an adult their literacy skills are completely different. So it was good to get that, to leverage that relation and describe how we do it so well to adults. So it moves into now to keep working on about what makes us stand out. So now that we've talked about what the corporate world sees, and we've talked about what strengths we have as an organization, it now puts us in a position where we need to be in a position where we feel exclusive, where we feel unique. And I can certainly speak to the way I've run a lot of literacy programs, is that we've tried to be everything for everyone to get those butts in seats, or to get those signatures, to get those learners. And that was just so wrong about what we were doing in terms of literacy provision. And it was actually damaging us. You know, I think at one point I gave my program manager incredible levels of anxiety, because we were throwing workplace literacy programs at the instructors and at the coordinators and say, yeah, we've got X amount of people. Some of them have got their language levels are a bit icky, so we need to kind of be that for them, and we need to be this for them. Or they need math, but they also need how to read this WMIS chart. Off you go and do it. Great, we need the numbers, get them signed up. And it you know, as well as the communication that takes twice as long sometimes with an employer, with workplace and you know, and it was incredibly challenging. So we understood, we took a step back and we go, right, no, we need to be, they need to come to us, and we need to be more picky, and we need to be exclusive, and we have the right, as the slide says, we have the right to look for the right partners. So you really need to think about, well, you know, before I go out there and before I approach employees and before I, you know, make these relationships and get these programs, I need to have an understanding of why I am exclusive, what I look for, what attributes in the partner that I'm going to be working with to make it work. So it's important to go, well, they come to us, there's obviously a problem there, and we have the problem to fix it. We know we should have that confidence. We've got that confidence to do it. And we need to think about, well, what are we looking for in these partners that will fit with us, that won't cause the issues and the problems that we've gone with, that we felt with before, and setting those ground rules almost to work with that partner going forward. So companies who look good in the community and partner with that link. So, you know, that was always an element of when I first started having that conversation or looking at these organizations. What was their opinion on community? What was their opinion on community support? Did they have an understanding? Did they even consider it? And a lot of the times, you know, networks through United Way were very preferable to us. In fact, the one organization we did work with successfully was a partner with United Way. And then we already had that mutual ground of understanding of giving back to the community and support. And now we're even having conversations with United Way networks. Obviously, there's that issue with that pushing on to sponsorship partnership through United Way. But in terms of delivering free services to partners, funding partners through United Way, there's that grounds there. So think about, well, the bare minimum of what I want this partnering organization to be with, and then look for those indicators that you guys have developed and say, well, these they're perfect, they do this, this, and this. These guys have approached us. I don't really see that they do any of this. So, you know, I'm already moving to one side. And you've got a positive start, that positive partnership already. There's the communication. There's, you know, your first date sort of chat up lines. You can say, well, we all share this, we share this, we share this. This is important. This is important. Let's see going forward how we can make it even better together. So those original pieces there. Just checking the box where there's any questions. Nope, perfect, we're good. So that leads us on to Tamara. Are we having a bio break? Would that be a good idea?
I think we can maybe go by a show of hands, whether folks
Yeah,
feel the
I
need
can-
for a bio break. You can either wave at us or raise up your hand under the reactions button.
No, doesn't seem to be.
No,
We've
I
all
think,
got
so Rick gave a thumbs up.
bladders of steel. That's no problem. That's good. Oh, actually, no, that's an awful analogy. Isn't that horrible? That sounds really painful. That's probably even a medical issue some people might have. So I'm gonna stop talking. Okay, so we'll keep going because this is a bit of a break point here. This is a bit of a break point here. So we spent a substantial amount of time on this piece because as coming from education and then go straight into nonprofit and learning nonprofit language and LBS jargon and acronyms and all those pieces like that. I never really, dare I say, I dipped my toe, but I've never really had a competitive edge to my my professional career. And TLG certainly has never had to do a sort of competitive, or the strengths that we've worked in is that we work in partnership with, and we have, our networking partners and Project Read, keeps us all in our individual areas and keeps those niches and is very, very strict on that. So we've never had a chance where, we've been competitive. Even if there's somewhere, an employment service provider over there doing workplace math, we just set Jane Tour on them and things would get put into place very quickly, and it would often be a mistake and partnerships would be made. So the chance, the time where we've actually gone, right, well, how do we win at something? How do we play to compete to win was really quite tough for me. So it took a while, but it's important to understand what a win looks like, first of all. And when you understand what a win looks like, you can then go into that playing field with a strategy about how to win. And that's what's important. We're going in blind or going up as previous TLG has done and trying to be everything for everyone has made it incredibly challenging for us. However, knowing what a win is, knowing how to play, knowing what makes us unique and being exclusive and being prepared put us into that field in a lot stronger, a lot more efficient position. So understand what you are delivering and define it. Literacy, skills development, basic skills upgrading, these are all words that collectively we will be able to understand. And even if we're not sharing the same terminology, we'd be able to translate. It is incredibly challenging for us to translate to someone who's never heard these words or used these terms before, and who probably have the word training for them is completely different to ours. So get a definition of what you do and stick to it and have it. So even if you have to translate to a corporate partner, you are not using different words. You're not using different terminology. Stick to a word and use a word and stick to it. Understanding what a win looks for them is also really important. And this is going to fluctuate and change. Hence is why we're so grateful to be in that consortium position and work with the Workforce Planning Board and have that consultant we work with now as a friend. But I also say that and I'll talk about this in detail later on, is having that volunteer role within your organization who's willing to do that, who's willing to speak to corporate partners, has that in already with a corporate world, so that you can use them as the consultant to say, well, here's the language we're using. Does anything need to be updated? What's the change going on in the corporate sector right now? How's the market looking? So you've got that volunteer who's able to support you with that, who already has that experience, rather than you doing it again off the side of your table, trying to keep up with the changes in another world, whilst you're also trying to change with the nonprofit and the LBS world as well. So what does a win look like for both them and us? and sharing that, understanding that, and having that win. So allowing skills to develop, help employees apply thinking. We found a big, at least the top 3 feedback from our networks is that they wanted to employ, support employees to give feedback for change. They wanted to really open up that door and allow them and give them the skills to let their supervisors know if something's not working or something needs to change. You know, that feedback there. And they spoke about a blockage. A lot of information would come down and very little important information would come back up again. So the fact that you were enabling, as an LBS provider, we were enabling them, giving them those comprehension skills, those communication skills to feed back up for change. That's what they really felt was needed, and they appreciated that. So allowing them to be better contributors. And then support, and with that point there, it opened the doors to support employers to find and grow the next middle management. So we found that application of learning, allowing them to develop, allowing them to contribute and feedback, that confidence piece, that skills piece was a big key. And if there's nothing that LBS does better, and of course, is that empowerment of adults, giving them that confidence through their skills development to allow them to do that. But also at the point, as an inside person looking in and speaking and working with these frontline staff, you're able to share what you're hearing and what you're learning about any hierarchical challenges or about any barriers, or if it's a clear language piece or anything like that. And obviously, there are conversations that could be had with an employer who's open to hear those things about challenges that we've recognized. And this is the point where I sometimes get a little bit of feedback from. Now, never at any point was I ever going to be changing TLG's mission statement and values and vision. Those are going to be solid throughout. But using the mission statement and using our vision was not. It didn't have the right language. Again, the other side of the spectrum in terms of language there, that non-based charitable base, that broader spectrum didn't have the right language that was efficient enough to get the results that these employers, like Sarah mentioned, is that short-term piece, that short-term return, wanted to see that unit-based return where something was coming back. So we developed a statement. We developed, sorry, let me 2 seconds. We developed that statement that helped in our elevator speech, in that 30 seconds there, that encompasses what we do and encompasses the language that an employer would recognize. And that statement there was shared amongst staff, it was shared amongst volunteers, it was used within that community network. And it was sort of an adaptation of what we do, but use that corporate language. So help employees solve a problem by creating a foundation of improvement and innovation from people from the bottom up. Again, it's an impact statement. It's relative to the needs of the employer. It's what we do, and it's something we can get behind. Help develop low-level workers to contribute and communicate. Taking out all the LBS sort of jargon, taking out those pieces there that we would understand. But again, it's information that we can do that an employee would do. And that impact statement was really very key in pushing ourselves forward and getting our foot in the door. And that initial, that 30 seconds of marketing that would then go to the entry level, the supervisory staff, and that they would take up. And that was really very key, and that made a lot of effect, a positive effect about relationships and communication that we started to have. From that point, when we got our foot in the door, and when we had the recognition of that employer and that workplace, we then threw facts at them and success stories. Employees, employees and these people who are going to be making partnerships, they want real life stories. They want to see where successes have been. you know, they recognize that what we can do. We've had that conversation. They've seen our state impact statement. Now they wanted to know, well, how did you do it? What was the success? Who have you worked with? And really, just like of any sort of funder or any sort of sponsor, those success stories of telling our stories were key. So we found that sharing personal experiences and learner stories of success really were favorable. We talked about how learners have positively contributed to the workplace and where those employees of those workplaces have seen that, and give examples from an employer's point of view, scenarios and situations that were successful. And it really helped in explain the effectiveness of what a change from an individual level can do. Because there's nothing more that we wanted to hear than, we found that they didn't want to hear 30%, employers saw a 30% increase in this. Employees saw a 20% reduction in turnover and pieces like that. We could have had that information, we could have pulled that information, but it's something that they didn't want to see at that point in time. They wanted to see successes, they wanted to hear stories, they wanted to see pictures, which surprised me, really, because we're working with employers here and funders who give, 250 characters to fill in a grant, and putting 20% increase this, those pieces work for us. So when we came to the table with my, percentage increase and ratio of for this and for that and stuff like that, stories, pictures, images, videos, if you've got them, really did make a difference in that initial communication there. Doug, do you ever speak, could you think that's not accurate, that you've met employers who want to see hard facts and figures?
Not from my perspective, Chris, no. I agree 100%. They already have employees in mind. And
Yeah.
So to build on what they know of the employee, and then they come and work with us, that's the story. And that's what they're really looking for, is the story, as opposed to, they already know what their ROI is and how much money they make and all that kind of stuff. I think the other part, and you mentioned this earlier, is that they really, this one particular company we're working with doesn't want to hire supervisors from outside the plant. They want to hire supervisors from the floor. And so there's a real loyalty piece there. I mean, we were talking about community and them giving back to the community, but I also think right within their own workplace, they're looking at a community. Does that help?
Yeah, no, good. And I like that, because maybe I'm thinking, well, maybe I just got a network of people who didn't think this, because it really did kind of blow my mind to think that to get that initial meet and that conversation and get things firing and have them go, this sounds great, numbers and hard facts would be key. But it was totally the opposite, which is even better. But it did mean we needed to up our game with what could possibly be one of the hardest jobs of LBS, is to get success stories, pictures, to get that sort of thing. Great, students said that they loved our program and they're in a job. Could you get them to write it down and send a picture of them in a job and stuff? Incredibly hard, but that piece is what really was the strength of the marketing. Oops, sorry. So share the facts. We talked about, just to review, effectiveness of the program, success stories. Then, of course, you can hammer home with the harrowing literacy facts that we work with. The 1 in 4 for our region, those fantastic Ontario, those fantastic facts of poor literacy and poor skills related to employment, related to health, all those elements there. Those are also really good to throw in, have those pieces there, and allow them allow the opportunity to use materials such as this as well. So you can see there that I've got safety lists and order numbers and stuff like that, and just give them the opportunity to look through the eyes of possibly one of their employees with those low skills, and look at those pieces and go, look at this. So, there's a high chance, or 1 in 4, or the chance that your employee, when they start on the job, will not be able to recognize what this means or what this means. They won't be able to access this. This isn't clear enough for a majority of the learners if you're going to be looking for newcomers or ESL learners or learners who finished their grade 12 6 years ago or more. So those pieces there that are really important to reflect on workplace documents as well, so they can go, yeah, we use those, we never thought about that. It's good. It's great that it's great that you recognize this on an individual level as well. And in terms of that, now that you've kind of shared the exciting pieces, we spent a lot of time on having those exciting pieces where we shared our stories and we had the pictures and we were able to flash the figures and the facts in front of them and everything like that. That really kind of is the key, right? Yes, this sounds good. I'm exciting. It's engaging me. I understand. I'm putting myself in a position where I can see that some of my staff may have challenges to this. I want to know a little bit more about the proof in the pudding. How are you doing it? What are we going to be signing up for? What's the process piece? Because right now I'm interested. I want to work with a partner to you, but I've never done this before. I'd rather, we've only worked in a position where we've just cut someone a check and they've turned up and they've done it. There's not necessarily been, from feedback that I've got, evaluation on how successful that training was that they've paid an abundance for. What are you going to have? Because already I'm a bit skeptic because it's for free and nothing is for free. But what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? And we could then go into the stuff that Doug does incredibly well and talk about that needs assessment tool. I'm not going to necessarily talk about that one because that's going to be Doug's, and I wouldn't dare even try and talk about the fantastic work that's being done there. But what we've done is to consider the process piece. We've used a visual metaphor to communicate what we do. And certainly that and process model and flow charts to recognize, well, this is the process that we will start off with. And that visual metaphor there, I happen to use the brain and the lungs and stuff like that. I'm sure there's more relatable, softer pictures and metaphors to be used out there. But again, that connecting piece that I spoke about what we do to deliver a service as an LBS language to that of a corporate for partner, we found that the visual metaphor is a best way to do that, to have that connection piece. So using visual metaphor to communicate, we talk about there the brain. So we support the learner to learning to communicate with others, contribute to feedback. We support them with understanding instructions, reading documents that they're going to be doing, and we support them to give that feedback and that down up feedback back to their supervisors. And that's very much the brain of the organization. So the organization is a body. We'll support them on that level with the brain to help them with that communication piece and that processing piece. The next is the muscle of the organization or of the business, and we're giving them those skills to do the jobs. We're helping them with these employment task-based skills that are needed to do the job in that job. So whether they're inputting data, they're reading a memo on the wall, they're completing a form, a job process form to complete, whatever those pieces, we're supporting them with the skills to actually do something to be with that. We're supporting them and training them just like you would with a muscle. We're giving them the opportunity to learn, to take on new skills, to make mistakes within the classroom and not in the workplace, and allowing them for that progress piece, that development piece. And in the end, we look to that as from the respiratory system point of view, is employees who are being trained will work more effectively together. So we're putting these pieces here And we're sharing that if you're investing in the skills, if you're investing in these different areas, then everything is going to be working together, and we're going to be pulling together and working towards a shared goal. And by having those 3 areas as part of your communication to employers, you're really kind of giving that wraparound communication and bringing in the fact that the business is going to improve on a whole if you're investing in these kind of literacy services. And again, it's that whole sector piece with the employer really wants to hear and see, well, my organization as a whole will improve if these pieces are done here. And how I do those pieces there at that next level down is partner up with the LBS provider. And we found that rather than saying, you know, invest in LBS, you're going to see this, you're going to see employers' reading skills improve, literacy skills improve, you're going to see their numeracy skills improve. They're always going to be saying, yeah, that's great, but how is that going to help my business? How is that going to support my business as a whole? And using that visual metaphor to treat the business as a body, as an organization as one, really did help us to have those conversation pieces there. We talked very briefly, and I apologize, I might have got my slides mixed up a little bit there, Tamara, I apologize. But we talked very briefly about creating that impact statement to start us off before having with that conversation with that there. And like I said before, not changing anything about our vision mission statement. That's that side of the piece. When I spoke about having TLG having those 4 pillars of service delivery, the one-to-one tutoring, the small group, the modular group, and the workplace literacy, and having those differentiated pillars of delivery there, and not putting workplace literacy tucked away in the group programming. This is when that impact statement really came into its own, about making sure that that delivery, that 4th pillar, was very different and had its own had its own process, strategic plan, tools, and everything like that. And creating that impact statement, and again, not talking charity and not talking community-based language, took me forever. It was really tough. And I was kind of getting a slap on the hand every time I said community, bang, you know, every time a keyword like that came out in my mission statement, like the person I was working with, he didn't really physically, it was all on Zoom, couldn't have done it. You know, he'd send it back to me and go, no, do it again. No, do it again. No, do it again. And I'm really grateful that he did. And he didn't write it. You know, he was like, no, do it again. No, do it again. Don't get it. Still don't get it. Still don't get it. And the questions that really he fired back at me, and these are the exact questions he sent to me after the 4th or 5th round of sending him a statement that just wasn't working. He says, I want to know how it's going to be done. What are you going to achieve? What will be done? How are you going to do it? And what product am I going to get at the end? That's all I want to know. Just be clear. Just tell me. Don't tell me, involve words that I don't understand and successes that you've seen and how it's going to bring in the larger source of the community. I don't understand what that means. So our goal to improve overall system. I would never have thought to put the word system in, but it's language that's relative. Investing funds are there. We don't really, unless we're looking for, particular word, the words investing in isn't necessarily a word that we use that is the same meaning as them, right? They literally mean paying money, paying resources, paying company time. Investing in the employee is investing in the organization. So again, pulling back to that larger piece, that impact statement that says you do this small step and it will lead to this large development. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Chris. Just as we're talking about goals to improve the overall system, I'm thinking about the overall workplace. And one of the employers we're working with was really concerned about an assessment, their interview process, including an assessment tool they've developed. But the assessment tool was developed 20 years ago. Yeah. And they said, would you mind having a look at it and review it and change it and take a look at it with a diversity lens. And I thought, that's amazing. So we did. I mean, I think that we are not just going in and providing our support to each individual or to individual employees, but we're also providing support to the workplace as a community. And there are things that maybe we don't do on a regular basis, but we have the skills. You guys are pros. You guys have the skills. You can pick this up, think about it, take it home, think it over, give the employer a call back the next day and say, yeah, you know what, I thought about it, I can do that. So I think there could be lots of opportunities here.
It was funny because the network that I'm in and communicate through email now, primarily through InNow, is the turnover of their roles is incredible. I was really surprised that, I'm working or I have support with a manager here, quite high level up roles. And since 2019, when we first looked into this over the pandemic, and it could be the pandemic, but their roles of, manager here, supervisor here, really high level roles, their changes have been different. So, it's been a case where, can I get your private Gmail to keep in contact here? Because you're no longer in this role, or you're no longer in this role, or I get an email saying, I don't deal with that anymore, Chris, I'd like to introduce you to this person, like that. So, that has been increasingly one of the barriers that I felt with, that getting that partnership, or getting that long bit of contradiction about what I say about developing long-term partners, but getting that partnership, even when the program has started and we're there to fix little issues and talk about this and talk about that, even when they're, the program started, that person is no longer in that role anymore, or that person's not there and that's swatched over there. So that was a real challenge, especially coming from, where, if Tamara and I are going to be starting a project, I know in a year's time, unless anything you're not telling us tomorrow, but I know in a year's time, Tamara is going to be that person I will be dealing with in the 3-year time. So I found that was really challenging, and starting those new relationships every time. And dare I say, if the job is being passed over, this workplace literacy program that we're running with them isn't always on top of their list for a clear communication to the next person who's taken their role. So a lot of the time we're going, yeah, we work with so-and-so, we've done this, this, and this is the program we're running right now. I'll kind of start from the basics to get you up to it. So again, one of the challenges that we found was an issue there. So I can see that we're coming up to half 11, and I don't want to necessarily want to break out into a room again, but I wouldn't mind just doing a quick 5-minute breakout room, and I'll mix everybody up again here, just to kind of reflect on what we've talked about so far, about speaking with and communicating with from an LBS to a corporate level. I'd love to hear some feedback when we come out of the groups about developing an impact statement and what sort of things we're going to come up with. It is part of our homework to develop or to word an impact statement. So you guys are going to be in a good position where you can discuss it here and then just fill in the blanks when you get back. But before we go on and talk about really having those communications and really turning to a marketing guru, I'd like to kind of think about, well, what are we going to be, what kind of language you're going to be using with to develop that statement. So I'm going to break us out into the rooms. I'm not going to be asking anyone to come back with a hard one-sentence statement unless they want to share, but I'd really like to give this opportunity to break out and kind of reflect about the things that we talked about, whether we agree, whether we don't agree, whether it's been a big old waste of time to talk about this or not, but an opportunity just to reflect on what we've done. So once again, this is the part where I feel so bad, because I feel like I'm trying to slow everything down, get the breakout rooms, and you guys can literally see in my head going, right, click here, click this, open this, and we're all on the same page because we've all lived in Zoom all up for the last 3 years. Okay, so it's open to random. I'm just going to up it to 3 or 4 people. There we go. Okay. Oh, you beat me to it, Tamara. You're so fast. You're quick on that draw. You're so fast. It's quicker than me. So I appreciate we just got a few more slides. And sorry, this is the best time for all of us to share. And once we're in that zone and kind of the brain's firing on these kind of topics, it's really good for us to get together and talk. And then I like cut you off. So it's nothing more frustrating. I apologize. But I wanted to just wrap it up now and give an opportunity for a poll and just talk about the communication part. So now that we talked about what we're selling, what makes us unique, how to be exclusive, and then how to start those connections of communication between for-profit and non-profit, LBS and corporate training. Wanted to just talk about sort of questions that we could be asking partners to create that exclusivity piece, whether that partnership wants to work. And I found these questions here have really been the better serving questions for us. And the language I've been told as well is that these will really open the employee partner, the possible partner, to reflect and go, oh, these are great questions. I kind of in a position where I know I need to do some sort of training, but I've never possibly had the opportunity to reflect back on it with these questions. So these questions have been really effective. What problems is the company facing? So look down, really have the details of what companies are you placing? Are they saying things like we've got high turnover? Are we saying things like we've got too many mistakes being made there? Again, push down for detail. Could you describe the employees that you're losing? Are they from a community? Is it a certain profile to those learners? Excuse me, those those employees you're losing. When you say mistakes are being made, in what department? In what exercise? Is it a numeracy? Is it the sheet cutting piece? Is it this cutting? What's the specifics there to have those questions? How do they currently train their staff? And ask the question is, do they evaluate the effectiveness of their training? And if they do, how do they do that? Is there, what tool do they use, or what process do they use to see if their training has had an effect? Because, if they have some training in and then turnover slows down, that is certainly not by any means the full responsibility that they've done the training. There could be other pieces in play there. So having that conversation about how do they evaluate the effectiveness of their training? Do they have any internal upgrading programs? If they do yes, then again, it's another sort of like an indicator that they put responsibility, they put emphasis and they put funding on training and upgrading, and they could be a good partner. And what do they visualize as a positive employee? How would they see, if they had 100 of them, what would they see would be the characteristics, or what visualize a positive employee? What do they make? And then again, you'll pull out those answers there that you can relate to, and create that whole that metaphor piece and that messaging piece. You're having those conversations there, being prepared for the benefits that this training is going to provide for you, provide for them. All right, it's going to enable investing in this training. It's going to enable your employees to follow that standardized work, something that we had feedback that a lot of employers want to do. And even though we talk about we want them to be individual and giving feedback, but at the end of the day, there's a work to be done and a process to be made, a process to be followed, and they want to enable their staff to do that. Contribute, we've talked about that. Increase succession planning. So like Doug said about the benefits of hiring within and of all that comes about, where is that investment within in the first place, with a goal for succession planning? And in programs we've worked with before, we've found that there's some incredible conversations where the instructor has been able to provide HR with where they've seen that, from assessment, from feedback, from how they communicate in class, what they do. Is there a smart serve? Excuse me, is there a soft skill indicator or assessment that we use that will show that there's some positive indicators of good leaders coming forward from the classroom? Those are, again, really pieces that employers want to know about because it's an extra support for them to find that succession planning, rather than feedback from already an overworked, not necessarily sensitive supervisor. Okay, so it's again another positive. How there's a direct link between investment in literacy and increased productivity. So you've got your success stories there. You've got your you've got your times where you've used that and you've used this program before, and employers have given you good feedback on that. And if there's sort of like, well, you're asking what the problem is, how are you going to be able to link to their current crisis? What programs have you got? What sort of resources have you done, successes that you've had that can link specifically to their current crisis that they're showing? Again, following on with more questions, it's really important that we're kind of asking these questions at the start. Now, you don't actually have to do this as a person to person. It can be a questionnaire, it could be a Google form, it could be a yes, no sort of thing. Any way to give their time and that entry level of the employer or the supervisor, give them the time back that would be spent in a conversation, a Zoom meeting, a person-to-person meeting. Because again, we're having those initial conversations there to sell your product, but also to see if that's something you want to invest your time with a partner with. So having these questions ready in a questionnaire, or have them ready to send as a link for them to do, or have them ready to have a conversation piece. It's important to have both those platforms in place. So, you're not kind of going back to the problem we talked about, where it's in emails back and forth. That information is being shared in one place in real time, and you are listening. You're in a capacity to listen, because right at this point in time, you're not talking about what you can provide or what you can do. It's a point where service providers, we're gathering information. Earlier on, I talked about sort of that flow chart piece. So once you've got that information there, you can then bring in the piece. It's important to remember to talk about, well, here is the process of which we can deliver that. We've heard your problems, we've heard here, and here is the solutions. So again, I just wanted to share this one with you here because using that metaphor process there, where the business is a human body and we can develop that human body. So using that relatable connection rather than the language we talk about, but using that metaphor piece and having almost that flow chart of how the income and the outcome and what the results are going to be, again, was a really effective tool that we use a number of times. In fact, this was an example of when we did an ESL, an English comprehension skills program. So we understood the proxy measures, what they wanted to achieve, and what measurements we were going to use to see if the training was successful. We had the training piece. We saw the immediate response that our training was going to do, and then the long-term piece as well. So that was a tool we actually used from the communication. The metaphor worked really well because it just so happened at the time the employer themselves were non-Canadian born, so they appreciated that. And that tool I just wanted to share there is something that we found really effective to sort of like seal the deal. So just to sort of wrap up now, we recognized that the key questioning and listening and getting information in was really, really important. To initially understand what their targets and needs were key, but also as we took information in, we were learning the language that they were being used, their phrases, their commonality, their common phrases, their common terms, and that would help us from the position from kind of relating to and finding that connection when they talk about measurement indicators and when they talk about wording that they use, systems, investments, and stuff like that. We can then put our literacy terminology and how we deliver that service in with that language. Because like I said, we've got that 30 seconds, we've got that limited time. They're not experts in LBS, and time may not allow them to learn as much as they want. So we need to be able to meet their needs using their language. And that asking those key questions that we talked about before, gathering that information. And again, I found it incredibly hard. It's not that I've got a big mouth or anything. No, I don't have a big mouth, but it, you know, gathering that information and not speaking over them and not saying, oh, in TIA, community, we are an LBS, you know, not doing that because we're diluting the information. Sorry, we're diluting the information that we want to get. So having those key questions, you know, maybe as a questionnaire, a form that they fill in or something like that. Yep, great to have this conversation with you. Before we move forward, could you take 5 minutes just to answer this questionnaire for me? You get the questionnaire results, you're able to have more substantial and better and well-marketed conversations going forward so that you are using up and utilizing that time and really compacting them with the information that they need to hear, but it's giving you time to translate the LBS and what we do so well to meet their needs. And it's that information process there, because at the end of the day, you're providing a relational, you're providing a service, it's not a transaction. So I found that it's again, feedback from presentations that we've done. The power of the we. Using we, using us, using together. TLG we can do that. That can be done. You will see these results, those positive pieces that are moving forward. They're not necessarily examples that we use in TLG and LBS because we know that it's a longer process. We know that it's a longer relationship because we know the challenges of LBS. But when we talk about the resources and Doug and Robin's presentations further on down the line, when we look at the process, we need to be able to say, we can do this. This is going to provide this. And the nature of the training is still in the point that we're developing an individualized service. And at no point in time can we ever say promise what the corporate promises in saying, yeah, do this, and you're going to pay this and you're going to get this. Oh, if you want to upgrade, you need to pay this and get this. We need to be in a position there where, well, we're going to come and deliver these free services and deliver this program, but it's not going to end there. If we need to do follow-ups, if we need to come back again, if we need to do this, if we need to say, right, these 4 employees, they're good to go. They can go. We recognize these 6 or 7 here need a little bit longer. They need an extra couple of weeks. They need to do this program there. We will keep working with them. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to work like that. It doesn't work like that. We're not going to say, right, you've paid for us. We've got our 6 weeks. If you want more, you have to pay more. There's no money involved. Our goal is the goals are to improve that learner. If that means it takes another 6 weeks or us to work in a longer term basis, that's what we're willing to do. And that's certainly the feedback that I heard from employers that are going, that is unique. That is great. That's an investment that I'd like to do. I'd like to take part in, and I feel safe in your hands that you'd be able to tell me that these employers are ready to put on the floor, that these employers might not be ready and they need a bit more support. They need it before you put them on the floor and they make mistakes, people get hurt, and mistakes get made, etc. like that. And that is seriously what we can do. And then the last couple of slides I just wanted to talk to there about again, making ourselves unique, looking for conditions for that good partnership. So what is there, how is that time? Is it going to be paid time? Are they being rewarded to be training? Is the location that you're serving them on, is it secure at night? We've had a couple of cases where we've had an instructor going into an employer late at night and there's been no security on and it's just her in the building alone and stuff. We obviously want to avoid that. What's the clear communication process between employer and trainer? Who's responsible for managing that? If they're not showing up to class, if they're disrespectful, etc. like that, is that you, or are they on workplace time? Are they being treated as an employer during the training, or are they being treated as a learner during the training? 2 very different things. And a clear process obviously in place to deal with absences, behavioral issues. If there's homework, if there's extra pieces like that are important. those are really key to set nice and early. Tamara.
Thanks, Chris. I know that we're getting towards the end of our time
Yes.
together, but
Yeah.
I do want to launch a very, very quick question poll. So no, and I can't do it because it says my polling session is inactive. I don't know why it says that. Anyway, I guess we won't be doing this bit. But really what we were interested is we talked a lot about logistics today in terms of how people feel about the skills that they have and that they can apply to workplace training when it comes to marketing. But we're also thinking that it's really important that you feel confident in taking those skills that you have already as LBS practitioners and applying them. So that's what I was going to ask you about, but I guess we'll just move past that because even though I did this ahead of time, it's not working.
Sorry.
So that's all right. That's technology for you. So I'll pass it back over to you, Chris.
Yeah, I've just got that that one more slide. There it is. Sorry. So as we move into a really challenging time, that isn't actually my desk, although maybe some people would argue it's an exact replica. Is that we're moving into a challenging time, but an exciting time where what we've done so well from the edges of our desks and what we've done and can do so well is now an opportunity for funding and ministry recognition. And we can really go at it very, very strong to reach out to those partners and those corporate partners and really close in on that divide so that we're reaching out of our own community networks and, dare I say, employment service networks where there is some uncertainty there of referrals in. We got to be thinking about, well, how do we maintain? How do we do this from the side of the desk with hundreds of other things that we do? How do we do it? How do we maintain? So just a couple of things we found out, we working with an advisory group or getting on that corporate or at least, getting on a corporate advisory group somehow, or at least having creating your own advisory group as a volunteer role to reach out and get either current or ex people who've worked in the corporate world in an advisory group. But also we I've developed a workplace literacy advisor, so as a volunteer position, which will be going out to the Volunteer Action Center, which will be asking for people with corporate training experience who know the corporate world, who are going to be providing 10 hours a month as a support for us, but also as a door knocker to go out there, use their connections and talk about what we can do and how we can do it. And having that person in a volunteer position where I can look from an outside, inside position, bounce ideas off. I found that or feedback that I've had that role, that volunteer role would be really, really well received. A lot of people out there who are in that corporate 9-to-5 sort of world where, they necessarily don't have the benefit of giving back to a community like we do, but they can utilize the skills and the networks that they've got to give back and make that link and bring a world of service provision, community service provision into their world was really beneficial. I had a couple of hands up, said, I'll do it at that last network meeting I was at. So there's a number of ways to do it, but I am really excited about the next couple of months, and I hope what we've discussed about here has given us some insight as how to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have just a few minutes left, so a couple of wrap-up statements here. Everybody who participated in today's call, you'll be receiving a new link later on this afternoon for the Community of Practice meeting, which is going to be on October the 18th at 10 o'clock. And we'll also be sending you your quote unquote homework that Chris has prepared for you to do in the next couple of weeks, and then come prepared to talk about at the Community of Practice. And again, our goal with the whole Community of Practice is to kind of help everybody deepen their learning. We live in a world of webinars, and they're great and a really good way to expose people to information, but we really want to see how people are applying the information that you're learning from this series. So I just want to mention that you can expect that, and I will send out the evaluation link again. And we're just wondering right now if anybody has any questions for Chris or any comments that you'd like to share as we wrap up. Okay, so Carrie doesn't have her microphone, I don't think, but she said this is fantastic. Lori has to head out. Doug is clapping. That's awesome. Is everybody in processing mode? Probably reflecting. Okay. All right, well, I don't see any hands up. So I want to thank you, Chris, for taking the
Thank you, everyone,
time to
for the
share
comments.
your expertise. Got me thinking about a number of things that even though we have a foot in the door, so to speak, with workplace literacy, there are a number of things that were raised today that I think Jeremy and Anne Marie and I and Doug, you're nodding too, that we can take into consideration as we are moving ahead with workplace literacy programming.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
see, I need to practice what I preach, that's for sure.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for taking the time to join us. I wish you a wonderful rest of the week. All right. Take care.